Hi everyone, and welcome to the Section 5 exercise and feedback video. In this video, I'm going to explain the answers to the exercises for Section 5, which is on the textual functions of language. Okay, in exercise 1, you need to identify which sentences are simple and which sentences are complex. A simple sentence is a sentence that's only made up of one clause. But what I didn't mention before is that a simple sentence is made up of one ranking clause. Now what that means is you could have a sentence with two clauses, but if one of those clauses is rank shifted, then it's still a simple sentence because one of those clauses would be functioning at the level of group. Now, a complex sentence, on the other hand, is a sentence that's made up of at least two ranking clauses. Okay, now that I've mentioned that, let's have a look at the exercise. The first text is about koalas, and it's an example. And the second text is the beginning of Rapunzel. Let me quickly go over the answers. In the Rapunzel text, the first sentence is a complex sentence. There are two ranking clauses. One of them is, there were once a man and a woman. The other one is, who wanted to have a child. Now, I know what you might be thinking right now. Maybe you're thinking, hang on, who wanted to have a child looks like a rank-shifted clause. But it's not. In fact, who wanted to have a child is what is called a non-defining relative clause in traditional grammar. And that means that the clause is not tied to the noun group a woman. It is separate from it. Now, it can be quite difficult to distinguish these kinds of sentences, but I'm not going to go into that right now. The second sentence is also a complex sentence. The first clause is the woman hoped. That's the independent clause. The second clause is that God would grant her wish, and that's the dependent clause. The next sentence is also a complex sentence, and the one after that is a simple sentence. That's why it's not underlined. And then over here, starting with but it was surrounded by, that is quite a long sentence. We have, it was surrounded by a high wall. That's an independent clause. And no one dared to go into it. That's another independent clause. Because it belonged to a witch, there's a dependent clause. And who had great power, there's another dependent clause. So there are a lot of clauses in that sentence, and they're all connected in various ways. The same thing for the last sentence. Many clauses, and they're all connected in various ways, so it's a complex sentence. In the next exercise, you need to decide whether the complex sentences are linking or binding. You remember that linking means adding an independent clause to another independent clause, and binding means adding a dependent clause to an independent clause. So number 2 here, koalas are fussy eaters. That's the independent clause. Choosing most of their food from a few varieties is the dependent clause. Now, choosing is a non-finite verb, which means choosing most of their food from a few varieties of eucalypt is a non-finite clause. Non-finite clauses are always dependent. Of course, because they can't stand alone as a sentence. Number 4 is also a complex sentence, but in this one we have an independent clause and another independent clause right after it. So that's an example of linking. In the sentences from the Rapunzel text, number 1 is binding. I've already mentioned that before. Number 2 is also binding. So is 3. 4 is a simple sentence. And in 5, we have a lot going on. First, there are 2 independent clauses connected with and. So that's linking. After that, we have a because clause. Now, because tells you that it's a dependent clause, so that's a binding. Who had great power, also binding, and that is linked to the final clause here, and was feared. So, in a previous video, I compared the Rapunzel text with a text about cassowaries, and what I said was, the cassowaries text was much more complex in its noun groups because it was an information text, whereas the noun groups in Rapunzel are pretty simple. If we were to compare those two texts again, you could say that the Rapunzel text has a lot more complexity in the sentence structure, whereas the cassowary text had a very simple sentence structure. Now, why could that be? It's because in a story, there are a lot more complex relations between the events. And of course, events are expressed by clauses. In the third exercise here, you just had to choose the best theme to go into the sentence. So here are the answers. And most of these are fairly straightforward, I think. We start with the Great Barrier Reef here. So that tells us what this clause is going to be about. Now, we already have a clue about that because the Great Barrier Reef is in the title of that paragraph. The next theme is really a clause. It's a dependent clause. Covering an area of 348,000 square kilometers, it's the world's largest coral reef system. Now, why is that the best choice? You could also say it is the world's largest coral reef system, covering an area of 348,000 square kilometers. But then it kind of interrupts the flow of these clauses that come after it. And so that's why it's a good choice to put the dependent clause first. In number 5, the amazing collection of coral reefs and islands, well, that's just another way of saying the Great Barrier Reef, right? So it makes sense that that is the theme of the sentence. It would be kind of strange to put that as the focus of the sentence because it's not new information. We already know this reef and we want to say something new about it. So sentence 5 finishes with 1.9 million people in the focus. And so that is picked up as the theme of the next sentence, another 1 million people. So that flow of information is really nice in this example. The last sentence here, number 7, the Great Barrier Reef is one of the natural wonders of the world, and then we add some new information at the end again. So I've explained this a little bit. Actually, the textual function of grammar is my favorite function, but it's the most difficult to teach, especially in a kind of online course such as this one. I hope that you've understood my explanations. If you haven't, please contact me. But let me just say one last thing. If you compared text A with text B above, it becomes pretty clear that text A is the most cohesive text. But why is that? Let's just take a quick look to refresh our memories. In text A, we know the topic of the paragraph is the Great Barrier Reef, so it makes sense that many of the themes in the sentences are about the Great Barrier Reef. Here's one, the Great Barrier Reef. It, that's the same thing, Great Barrier Reef. It, the amazing collection of coral reefs and islands, the Great Barrier Reef. Okay, so most of those themes in the sentences match the overall idea of the paragraph. However, in text B, it's quite different. One of the world's most unique and diverse ecosystems is the Great Barrier Reef. Okay, look, that doesn't sound too bad. We put the Great Barrier Reef at the end of the sentence in the focus position. But then, if you keep doing that, it kind of gets strange. Covering an area of 348,000 square kilometers, the world's largest coral reef system is the Great Barrier Reef. That just sounds very repetitive because the Great Barrier Reef was the focus of the previous sentence, and it's also the focus of this sentence right after it. It sounds kind of strange because usually the focus is new information, but this is not new information anymore. Okay, I go on. Almost 1.9 million people visit the amazing collection of coral reefs and islands every year. Again, the Great Barrier Reef is put into the focus position. It just sounds strange. Another 1 million people are lucky enough to live near the reef. One of the natural wonders of the world is the Great Barrier Reef. Now, this is just really repetitive and strange, isn't it? If you keep putting the topic of the paragraph at the end of the sentences, it's going to sound weird. It's not just as simple as that, though. There are many contextual things to think about, but I hope that in this little demonstration, you've understood how textual grammar can really help a paragraph and a text to be more cohesive and more coherent. Thanks very much. That is the last feedback video of this course. I will be posting some more bonus content into this course soon, so keep watching. And as usual, if you enjoyed this course, please show your support by sharing it with your friends, giving it a good rating, subscribing to the YouTube channel, doing all those things, because I believe this is really, really valuable information and it needs to reach as many people as possible, and you can help me to do that. So thanks very much. I hope you've enjoyed the course until now, and I'll see you in the next video.